Today we're going to talk about bump steer, which is basically your tires towing in and towing out, and why it's important and why you need to check it if you've changed something on your car from factory specs. Bump steer is the tires towing in and out as the suspension goes through its travel. So at rest the tires are straight, and some suspensions the tires tow out or tow in a little bit as they go through suspension travel up and down. So ideally on a drag race car, you want the tires towed in about 1/8 of an inch at rest. When the car takes off and the front end comes up for weight transfer, you want it to still have about 1/8 inch toe in. When you start changing caster on a car, it affects that. And I hadn't been paying attention to it, and I learned a valuable lesson. Most cars that I've messed with have basically stock suspension, and I haven't moved it very much. I may have added it 1 or 2 degrees caster just so it drives better. The reason caster drives better is if you imagine the upper ball joint straight above the lower ball joint, that is 0 degrees caster. If you move the upper ball joint back in relationship to the lower ball joint, back towards the back of the car, that adds positive caster. So you can add 1 degree, 2 degrees, 3 degrees. And the advantage to adding caster is that the more caster you have, the more that the weight of the car keeps the front tires straight. So when you turn the tires, they're not turning on 0 degrees caster, they'll tilt it back, so it's turning on the back side of the tire. So when it does that and the wheels turn, it lifts the front of the car up. And then you let go of the wheel and the weight helps push the car back straight. So if you've driven a car that has manual steering and you've let go of the wheel and it straightens back up, it's because the car has good positive caster. From the factory, these cars typically have around 0 degrees or maybe 1 degree caster at the most. And they did that because with manual steering, it makes it easier to turn the car because you're not lifting the weight of the car up. I've always been a big fan of adding some caster to a car so it drives better when I'm drag racing. So when I'm going at 125 or 135 miles an hour, I can let go of the wheel if I wanted to and the car would still keep tracking straight. So on this car, what I had done was we had built headers for this thing, and the header tubes are very big. So to get more clearance between the center link and have enough room to build headers, I slid the K-frame forward. This engine is on elephant ears, so it's not attached to the K-frame. So what I did was I notched the holes in the K-frame, slid the K-frame forward about 9/16 of an inch. So in my mind, I was just gaining some caster, it's gonna drive good, and I was gonna get more header clearance. The problem with that is that it changed my bump steer more than I realized, and it affected the car a lot. So I'm gonna show you a video of what happens when you have too much caster. The ball joint tilts and the back of the ball joint comes down, and then the arc of how the tie rods move through their travel affects the tow out. It actually pulls the tires apart at the front and together at the back. So I had to redo that, and we're gonna show you what I did to fix that. Okay, so what I'm going to do on this view is show you how this tire tows out as I jack the car up. I've got my son holding the steering wheel straight so it doesn't move, and you can barely see the rear tire in this video. So I'm going to jack it up, and as it goes up, this thing is going to tow out a little bit. See how it does that? Okay, now the tire's off the ground and it's towed out that much. So I have to fix that. This is what a stock ball joint and tie rod connection looks like, and then I modified the one on this car, and I'll show you what it looks like. Okay, as you just saw on my stock Dart front suspension, this is how the ball joint looks on the driver's side. And as you can see, the tie rod is tapered, and this hole is tapered. So what I did was I wanted a Heim joint kit with shims, so I can adjust where this attachment spot is. I can move it around wherever I want to change the arch of how this thing moves through travel. So what I did was I found a UMI kit that had 11/16 diameter Heim joints and would take an 11/16 tie rod, and I bought a tie rod for a C-body. And the C-body part number is ES355RL, and I got 2 of those, one for each side obviously. And then the kit comes with Heim joints that are right-hand thread. So the C-body tie rod is left-hand thread. So what I did was I had drilled this out to 5/8 so I could use the 5/8 bolt from the kit, and then you can move the washers, or actually spacers, around to make this attachment spot wherever you want. So you bolt this all together and then you move it through travel and you measure it and you see how much this thing tows in and out as it goes through travel. Ideally, you want this thing to stay pointed perfectly straight. If you tows out or tows in, obviously the tires are going to scrub. It's going to make the thing harder to roll when the suspension is up, which kills mile per hour in ET. Okay, here's the stock ball joint, and here is the UMI bump steer correction kit. So what I did was I knew that this attachment spot had to go to the top side of this, because what happened was when I put caster in it, it tilted this ball joint down. So I knew that this pivot point needed to move back up into this range. So I tried it, and I actually put the Heim joint on the top side just to see what it would do, and then it would tow in a whole bunch. So I knew I had to be in the range of where this is at. So I took a torch I heated this up right here and bent the end of this ball joint tie rod connection up, and I also twisted it so this heim joint could sit attached to it and not be in a bind. Because obviously, if you look at it like this, if you come up too much, it would get in a bind and hit right here where the two spots are. So I actually had to bend this up and twist it. So what I did was I had a big crescent wrench and I had my angle finder on it, and I watched it and I moved it and then I twisted it and I watched the degrees before and after, and I copied it on the other side, and I got very lucky, and they're basically identical from left to right just by heating that up, bending it, and twisting it. So then I messed around and tried different shims, top and bottom, to get this where I wanted. And I ended up having to put the finished shim in here, and it was still too thick. So I had shims made that were half the thickness of the finished shim that comes in the UMI kit. So the UMI kit shim is about 115 thousandths. I had a pair made that are about, well, actually I took some and cut them in half and cut them down to about 60 thousandths, and that's what I needed to get my toe in where I wanted it to be. So now all I have to do is take these out and cut this bolt off to get rid of the weight, and it looks nice, and I'm finished. Okay, after we've made our changes with the thinner washer, we're going to jack this thing up and watch it. Now what I've done is I've measured the toe in at rest and the toe in at max travel to make sure that it doesn't change. The tires will actually come closer together as it travels because of the arch of the lower control arms actually pulls the wheel and tire closer together, so it will change as you go up and down. But the idea obviously is to keep the tire straight as it goes through its travel. Here we go. Since fixing the bump steer in this car, it's picked up almost 4 miles per hour. So that shows you how important it is. This thing drives like a dream. You can let go of the steering wheel, cruise down the highway, and it just goes straight. You turn the wheel and let go, and it straightens back up. Bump steer is a critical thing.